Welcome to the Popular Pig Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Rooda, and today we're going to be talking about AI and how SwineTech has come into contact with AI, utilized AI, and where we might see the future of AI playing out for the swine industry and kind of beyond that. So today we're very excited to have a couple of our engineers on today.
Yeah, just to be clear, we're talking about artificial intelligence.
Yes, not artificial insemination. So what we're going to do is kind of start with John here and have him give his background. But who we have on today is John Rourke. He's a co-founder of SwineTech, joined us in 2015. And we also have Abraham Magstadt, current CTO, and Abraham Espinoza, co-founder and COO. So John, would you mind giving us a little bit of a background on yourself? Some of the journey through the engineering and technology world and all the way up to the time you joined SwineTech?
Well, yeah, I'll try to keep it down to like 60 seconds, but I was teaching IT classes in terms of hands-on troubleshooting PCs and networking and data recovery for about 15 years. And in that process, I discovered some things that we needed to help the technician, and so I developed a product and started manufacturing it. So during that process, I had to learn a whole lot about, my background was engineering, went to engineering school, never finished my degree at that time, but I learned how to do programming both in the hardware level and the software level, kind of switching between them as I needed. And that's kind of what led me to SwineTech and your first questions for me.
Is that the product that got that award through Microsoft or Windows or
Windows 95 Windows Magazine? Yes.
Yeah.
In 1995, I got the top 100 diagnostic products for 1995.
And then around 95, you were also working with a group in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines, on a herd management software, which was completely probably never going to become relevant again to you in the future.
That was actually earlier. Even it was when the IBM PC first came out in the early to mid 80s, and it was called the Swine Breeding Herd Management System. And I was just actually reviewing today, talking to Gemini, our little AI partner, sometimes, and it was saying like, oh yeah, that was like the original data collection program that kind of kicked things off, bringing the computers to the agricultural world.
Funny.
Yeah.
So right around the time of PigChamp, you were working with the guys in the Philippines.
Yep.
And then you ended up working with NASA, Pentagon, Royal Air Force, and some of the teaching and consulting?
That's true. I would do 1 week boot camp seminars, and we would go on site a lot of times. And we did 10 days at the Pentagon. We did a couple weeks at NASA. And of course, the Royal Air Force in the UK. And I even taught computer repair to IBM and Compaq and Dell. So
what was the coolest thing that stood out when you were working in those organizations? Departments, whatever we call them, I guess.
The main thing that I would do in my classes is teach the philosophy of computers, because if you teach the actual tech things, what happened or what was existing at the time, in less than 3 years, a year or two, it would be all obsolete. But if you understand the why and the how computers are developed, you learn the why and the how of how to take care of them and troubleshoot them. So that's always what I would really work on.
Gotcha. So then you met us in Cedar Rapids,
right,
during a $1 million or 1 million cups event, which was where entrepreneurs present ideas and people in the community try to volunteer and help. And at the end, they say, does anybody in the community have anything that they could use help with or can help? And John raised his hand and had an idea, and I was like, well, there's an engineer we can go talk to.
Yep.
It turns out you grew up in Oskaloosa, went to the same grade school I did.
That's right. And that's the first and only pitch I actually did for any of my own companies. Later on, I did a few for SwineTech, but that's the only time I actually got up on stage and you saw me do that, and you heard my background and said, hey, can I ask you questions from time to time? I said, sure.
Do you remember when we gave you that napkin? I'll add context here in a bit.
Was it at the
Yeah, when you decided to join us, and then you guys started talking about ideas. Do you remember that napkin?
No, I don't remember the napkin itself, but I do remember Matt calling me up and asking, there were 2 questions that you had. Is number 1 was, should we use Arduino or Raspberry Pi?
I knew nothing about technology.
And the second one was that you said all the experts told you you would need a team of engineers, $250,000 in a year to develop this product. Could I do it with $20,000 in 90 days?
Which is funny because like they were high and low at the same time. Like define product, define technology, and define done.
Define done is very important. True.
So the technology at the time was using voice recognition to identify when a sow was laying on her piglet. And we had a 90-day program where they gave us $20,000, and you needed to prove a prototype by the end of that program. And so Abe and I, with very little technical background or minimal technical backgrounds in college, we're kind of just going from mentor meeting to figure out the business model and the plan and the trajectory of where this thing could go and understanding just the deeper aspects of the business. And John was just plugging away in the corner, building this voice recognition system that also used a vibration and an impulse.
Yeah, the original quote unquote CTO, but really I was just the tech guy. However, my answer to your question was yes, I can do that, but I'm not going to be able to get you a commercially viable product, but I can get you something that works. And we did. In less than 60 days.
Yeah.
And we even had to develop 3D printing skills to do it, which none of us, I don't think, had ever done anything like that before.
Yeah, we ran that 3D printer raw.
Yeah.
And we got so lucky because it worked perfectly for the 3 months we needed it.
Yeah. And then never again. And so then for, I guess, a couple of years there, we pursued refinement of that. And then, Adam, you joined as principal software engineer and then eventually became CTO at SwineTech. Can you talk a little bit about your background and work in the world of technology? Because it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Got a bachelor's in computer science and engineering, and while I was pursuing that, I actually joined, my dad had a startup that he was deeply involved in called the Information Store, specialized in petrotrek technology on finding untapped potential in petroleum sites, finding out whether or not there was an additional reservoir that might be hidden. And so it was kind of like looking for lost gold. It was a ragtag bunch of technology experts, and they developed their own proprietary language set called PTK-PSL. And it was very interesting for me to be a part of that and sort of see how the sausage is made at a startup before I actually had my first real technology job. These were all internships that I had there initially, and then I got headhunted by Rockwell Collins at my university, and they said, hey, we'd love you to come up and work for us. And I said, I can't come at the normal week for recruiting. I need a different week. So they gave me a different week, and I did not know at the time that what that meant was I was going to be with all the PhD candidates. So I showed up with my bachelor's degree, and everyone else around me has got a doctorate in literal rocket science. And I felt completely outclassed. Thankfully, that wasn't held against me in any way. But I got to join a burgeoning large corporate software team. There was about 300 engineers. We were working on secure communications for the government. We worked on a platform called Common Core, where we hybridized the idea of hardware abstraction and software-defined radio and took and developed something called TrueNet. I became the lead on that project for the factory line and sort of automating what it meant to validate all of the different pieces that come together, and how do you organize all of these engineers, and when something does go wrong, how do you properly pinpoint where that's happening? That was hugely informative for me and helped me mature a lot. About that time, deep into the factory line, you reached out to me on LinkedIn, and you said, hey, are you interested in talking about another opportunity? I went back, talked to my family, and we were kind of like, I don't know, you're gonna regret it if you don't have the conversation. You gotta at least know what it's about. So we met at, what was it, Cheddar's? We've had a lot of success recruiting at that restaurant since then.
Oh yeah.
So you started telling me about how people are using paper everywhere, and how that is kind of the golden standard of record keeping, and the truth that then is getting digitized some places. And I thought, man, we're going to change that. I want to be a part of that. And it spoke to me somehow. I got very excited about it. And since then, I joined the company. I have done all sorts of different job responsibilities since I've been at the company, from soldering items, debugging things. I've worked in the Linux kernel. I've worked on our web product. I've worked in the mobile app. I helped build that up, and initially working in Arduino and C, C++, so many different items. What a ride. A roller coaster, I would say.
You were dealing with some pretty corrosive shit too for a while there. We were trying to get, we were working with wearables on sows, and we were trying to clean them.
I just want to point out that, to be clear, we had the wearables with adhesive away from animals, where the caustic chemicals came into play.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. This was in the office.
But yeah, we found out that essential oils are the best way to remove adhesive gunk, and that it was all about fine-tuning the ratio and distillation process.
Yeah, don't use the harsh chemicals.
Do not go pure.
They destroyed the products.
That's right.
And the time we were researching waterproof fabrics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had a lot of time that we spent in figuring out the right fabric to put in front of a microphone that could withstand a power washing event.
I forgot about that.
But not distort the signal enough so that we could still algorithmically find the signal.
Yeah, that whole journey with SmartGuard was seemingly an invention, but I think we had 24 different things we had to invent to make that thing work.
There were a lot of challenges in productizing.
Yeah. Yes. So what was it like going from managing billion-dollar projects at Collins Aerospace to a startup where limited resources but decision-making could happen in a moment?
I mean, one of the things that was disorienting for a good period of time was transitioning from a place where everything had to be approved and red tape and decisions had to be considered from a perspective of governmental compliance and standards to, well, what we're looking for is the best solution and making that happen, and we'll figure out some of the other things along the way. That was amazing. I became mesmerized with that workflow of how do we innovate effectively and make the right decisions. And I remember to this day, I was talking with the VP at the time, and there was a concern about the audio codec, and it wasn't working quite right. And I was just banging my head on, I got to fix this kernel. Somehow I got to solve this in the software because we can't change the hardware. That would be unheard of with an SDR solution. And he looked at me and he just said, I'll swap it out. I'll get a new board here next week. What? You can do that?
And boom.
Boom.
New board,
and the codec worked, and it was great. And man, I love that. That was wonderful.
I didn't know you worked on SDR. SDR is great. It's amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do there. Yeah.
So when we started SwineTech in the entrepreneurial world, artificial intelligence was a conversation. It was something people were doing. Machine learning was probably the most common term that was used as a part of AI. And then as we were building our voice recognition systems, that was a conversation we often had, was standard algorithm, machine learning, how do we want to go about this? And then by the time we hit 2020, we were tagging images of piglets and preparing to, we bought Pumbaa. Was it Pumbaa?
Pumbaa was the build server.
Pumbaa. So a lot of our tech equipment we name after famous pigs. So
we do.
Pumbaa, and that was a very expensive piece of equipment, but to help us with doing computer vision. And so when COVID happened, I remember seeing how many images I could tag in an hour or two, and tagging thousands of those things. But today, now natural language processing and other forms of AI have become incredibly familiar to the general public. Can you talk about what AI is, and from your perspective, what that journey has looked like from your lens over the past 10 years? And we'll start with Adam, and then we'll maybe hop to John.
10 years.
We'll start with what is AI? So people hear computer vision, machine learning, natural language processing, deep neural networks.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of flavors, and we can talk very deeply about a lot of them.
Is it all ice cream? They're just different flavors?
I mean, yeah, that's one way to think about it. I mean, especially to the layperson. It is a algorithm that knows more than I do, right? Machine learning is typically more about, I have a process that I'm going to train you how to do well at. And there's all sorts of different ways that you can train it to do that. And regressive learning versus, I'm gonna fine tune this specific solution. I think about earlier on in SwineTech when we were dealing with the algorithm that you initially invented, Rourke, on how to find a piglet in distress and the signals that were involved there. One of the paths I went down was the idea of generating spectrographs and training a machine learning algorithm on detection through the shape of the fast Fourier transform.
Can you make that layperson speech?
I'd like to offer some insight into that, because that's what really impressed me about what you brought to the company. Because we had kind of backed our way into big data, because we were just collecting just scads and scads of squeals and audio forms.
And for reference there, what he's referring to is every time a piglet distress went out, we would record an audio ring of some 10, 15 seconds for testing.
And I developed the algorithm strictly through intuition and some of my understanding of fast Fourier transforms and such, where it actually changes the domain from a time domain to a frequency domain, where you're looking at the frequency of the squeal and the pattern of the squeal. You were always talking about the patterns, and that was definitely key.
Yeah, the breath squeal. So for a producer, the squeal that we recognize, there's a waveform, which is the wavelength or that pattern, and then there's how many decibels, how consistent. And all of that was factored in.
Yeah, my intuition was if a pig is about to die, that it's going to focus all its energy in one very, very sharp peak. The frequency will vary according to the animal, but the peak versus the overall audio level is what I was looking for. And so I made like several gates, we called them, in terms of, is this a death squeal or not?
Yeah,
and
there was a teat fight was really the alternative scenario you were trying to,
the irritation or the wanting to
nurse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's what we had, just so much tons of data. We're always trying to look to modify those gates to see which data was going to give us the valid information. And then when Adam came on board and said, I can make a sonograph out of that, we'll make pretty pictures out of the data, and it's like, oh, wow. Because you look at those pictures, you could literally see the peakiness, you could see the pattern. And then we started taking the very first forms of AI to see if we could recognize that, a series of those sonographs. I don't think we only had, you only gave us like 3 months to do it. And
no, funding only gave us 3 months to do it.
So it turns out we didn't use that then, but that was just the very, very beginnings of AI, really. That was machine learning. But it uses the same strategies in terms of the training data and the actual testing data. And then you can probably tell more about that.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I think that's part of what modern AI today is doing, is it's making us think about things in new ways. And so when I took these fast Fourier transforms and I said, hey, let's make a picture out of it, it made us think about the whole problem in a different way. Similarly, when we talk about NLP, natural language processing, and LLMs, large language models, and we talk about, hey, I'm going to open ChatGPT and I'm going to ask it a question. What it's really doing is deciding which words are most likely to be strung together to give you an informative answer. There's not really reasoning happening. that is going to be something that's more about a generalized AI and artificial and AGI, if you're familiar with that term, that's going to bring to the table. It's going to dynamically change things.
AGI, most people listening are not familiar with AGI.
Yeah. So the basic premise is instead of having a artificial intelligence that's trained on the concept of language and which words are most likely to be strung together to give an informative response, you would have something that thinks and reasons more like a human brain, that's generalized, and you might teach it Go, but it can take those same lessons and apply them to the game Battleship. Once you get into a generalized AI landscape, it really changes the entire landscape of where AI is at, the functionality that can be accomplished, how it gets used. That is going to be a big game shift when we hit that. All sorts of conjecture about timelines on that, depending on who you ask and which expert you talk to. But I think today, primarily, you look at some of the changes that Claude is making. It's a huge tectonic shift in the landscape, especially in the software industry. You think about Mythos that just got released, how that is exhibiting defects that have been silent in some of the libraries, such as BSD, for 12, 13 years that software developers have never found. And then Mythos turns on and bam, everyone knows about it. And it's a vulnerability, and suddenly you got an all hands on deck. That needs to be fixed today because it's out there. As Mythos comes to the market and it starts hitting everything, everybody's going to have to change their stance. So, in the groups I'm in, I'm seeing security directors say, hey, the game has changed today.
And we're going to get into security a bit too here in a bit, but this started with buying a decibel reader from a music store and sitting on a bucket and pointing it at a pig.
Yeah.
And writing that down on pieces of paper. And now we're at AI.
And recording it on your your iPhone.
I didn't have an iPhone then.
Oh,
Nope.
this is even earlier.
Nope. Oh, I had some crappy,
We had the laptops.
crappy black laptop. And then we had a Star Wars laptop that we got real cheap.
So you guys mentioned here in the conversation that we took that algorithmic approach at the beginning.
Yeah.
There was conversations for us to make the jump to a full AI solution at some point in time. Now everyone's trying to use AI. There is a certain level of preparation that you need to have, certain information that you need to gather, and just make yourself logic of it before you go to AI sometimes. From your perspective, how does that process needs to look like for someone who essentially wants to try AI?
What should people consider before they get started?
I mean, let's talk about context. Are we talking about an engineering team? Are we talking about a copywriting team?
Let's talk. Let's maybe reframe it to the producer, and they are wanting to bring AI into their day-to-day operations, and that might be similar to the things we have done, where it's ChatGPT or Claude for spreadsheets, PowerPoints, writing documents, but it also might be trusting a company to pay for their computer vision technology. We'll get to what questions should I ask vendors about AI to ensure that I am not getting swindled, or misled or oversold. But we'll start with, before you are widely bringing AI to your team, what are some things you should consider and put in place before you go do that?
I mean, if I was going to give some generalized advice, it would be starting with explaining to everybody that AI is not infallible. It makes mistakes.
That's a big one.
And you should all be aware of that. One of the scariest things I have seen happen in some of my personal circles is people get into a position where AI said it's true, which is the new, I found it on Google.
Yeah.
And, we have spent a long time as a society realizing that I found it on Google does not necessarily mean it is true. And the same is also true from an LLM machine that's spitting out an answer that it may have hallucinated.
I was using AI today for an application.
Oh, no.
And I needed less than 500 words for my answer.
Yeah.
So I said, but please do this in 490 words. Give it a lot of context. It pumped out an answer. Said this was between 470 and 490 words. Threw it into Microsoft Word, did word count. It was 407. So I respond, why can't you count? And it said, you're right, I'm terrible at counting. It is actually this many words. Would you like it to be longer? If it can't even get the right number of words and a few paragraphs right, where else could it be hallucinating? And this is today's AI.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Just a quick story on that. I was reading in a forum. There's this guy who was using AI to track metrics from his team, essentially. And he was using it for reports, for everything. And after a board meeting, a random question made him find out that the AI was making up metrics because he just took the budget and said, you know what? That makes sense for this metric. And that's what it was reporting. So that's scary.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot stop. You cannot ever outclass critical thinking right now. And I think the game changes with AGI when and if that comes about. But right now, you can't stop critically thinking about what you're reading and whether or not it's true. One of my favorite stories is I was reading a periodical from a professor, I think he was from Stanford, and he had done a pair collaboration with Claude. And what he had done was he said, hey, we're going to work through a whole dissertation program together. And you're going to prepare it for me and get all this right. And then he took the position of an advisor and said, hey, you got this wrong, make these modifications. And what he saw Claude do through working together was that he would say, hey, this data is wrong. I need you to go back and verify your findings. And what Claude would do in this particular circumstance is it would adjust the graphs to align with expectations, but then nothing else changed.
Oh, no.
And there were several other ways that this happened. And, he was paying attention because he's an expert in the area and realized it, caught it, and dealt with it. But when it was all said and done, he said, right now I would equate Claude to a junior postgraduate student in terms of this effort, which is actually truly impressive.
But far less than what people think it is.
But you need an advisor. Yeah. You need somebody to help you understand that, hey, it made a mistake, and now we're going to do something about it. And that, to me, if there's nothing else you took away, if you can maintain critical thinking on your team while rolling out AI and a healthy dose of skepticism while using it to move you forward, you can be successful. There's all sorts of advice about build on guardrails and train this and that, but maintain critical thinking. It is so imperative.
So that's point one. What are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I have a personal experience with that where I asked Gemini about myself without telling it was me. And so I asked about my time at the time of John Rourke at SwineTech and the time of John Rourke teaching troubleshooting seminars and separately. And it found information on the internet about that work I've done and book I wrote and different things like that. But it made connections that might have seemed logically consistent. And I was going to say logically consistent to it, but it doesn't think. It's just associating words together, high probability words that are next to each other. That's all it's doing. And maybe some of the new ones are doing more context, but it can still fail at that because it was saying, oh, this technique you talked about in the book, obviously that's why you did this at SwineTech. It's like, and it wasn't saying you, it's like, this is why John Rourke did this. It's like, actually, no.
So I was like, no, I was flying by the seat of my pants.
Anyway, eventually I did say that it was actually me, and it was actually, no, that's not correct. It did get a lot of stuff right, but it was just taking the highest probability. That was all it was doing. Now, when you build agents, I've learned more about AI myself recently in the last 6 months. When you build agents, it will do more reasoning, but it's not really there yet. It's still, they're developing that. Context and reasoning is very difficult.
And so
for AI.
Outside of driving critical thinking in the organization, let's talk security, because I think there's some pitfalls people can avoid by maybe just doing a couple things. What are a few things people can do before they roll AI out through their whole team that can kind of protect them in this current world?
There's a phrase in engineering, stop the bleed. If it really means make it so that the same thing doesn't keep happening. And one of the things that you'll see time and time again repeated is that there is something cool happening. I'm going to use it. And this results on many teams of, hey, I opened ChatGPT and I started typing company information into my private account. Or I opened Gemini, or I opened Claude, or I opened any of these awesome tools that exist. And while we want to encourage them, the minute that you've done that on your private account, that information is public record. And it is owned by the company that you typed it into. Furthermore, even if you have a paid subscription, you may not have opted out of the fact that the organization that you're sending information to actually owns it. And so making sure that you're actually verifying the agreements that are in place between you and the company based on the tier that you're subscribed to and the security settings that you have. Because if you haven't done that diligence, there is a fairly good likelihood that you are actively giving rights of your permissions and your data to that company. And it's usually phrased along the lines of company X has the right to train their AI models on data that you enter. And that doesn't seem like I'm giving you rights, but then there's a separate section where you can read more details about what that actually means. But once you send that over, it's not yours anymore. This was really clear 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when you pulled source code from Stack Overflow and you copy pasted it to something, or you posted something to Stack Overflow. It is less clear when you feel like you're having a collaborative conversation with somebody that you're working with, aka ChatGPT. And you're just like, hey, I pointed out the code like I would with a coworker. No, you pasted into Stack Overflow, depending on what your agreements are. So that's one thing I would really point out is pay attention to your agreements.
What about like an acceptable use policy around what? Yeah.
That to me is the stop the bleed, right? So if you don't make a rule, there is no rule. And that means, hey, I'm going to go open ChatGPT and use it because no one said I shouldn't. And sometimes you need to be really clear. Hey, I have done the work that Claude is going to be used at this company, and I have the agreements in place, and I've approved it, and so I'm going to put it out as a policy that says don't use these other tools, not necessarily because they're bad or anything else, but like I know it's safe for us to use Claude, and so I'm going to give everybody a seat, and the agreements are in place, and it'll be fine. That is a pretty succinct way to point it out, and it gives you the ability to take disciplinary action if that's where you have to go. But be clear. Set expectations, because if you don't, and this is one of the tension points of if you have a good employee, you want them to be innovative, you want them to be modern, you want them to find the new technology, and there's this forcing factor of, but we need to do it safely, and so giving your team the guide rails so that they can be successful through an acceptable use policy or even just an AI usage policy. You can make it simple. Hey, these are the things we approve. These are the things we don't approve. And then checking how your data is being used or not.
Well, the ultimate security would be a local model, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you could definitely do that. And Olama would be one example. DeepSeek, I think, has some local models that they've kind of fallen from grace of late. They're not quite as popular as they used to be when they made headlines. But
DeepSeek or the local models?
DeepSeek.
Yeah, they've really fallen off.
They were very popular for a brief moment, a flash in the pan.
Yeah, they had their 20 seconds of fame.
You probably know we talk a lot about innovation in pork production here. What you might not know is SwineTech, the team behind this podcast, is leading the charge with their PigFlow platform. SwineTech is dedicated to empowering pork producers worldwide to provide high-quality, individualized care for every pig. Their world-class workforce management and point-of-care platform, PigFlow, streamlines, automates, and monitors routine and emergency care, communication, daily workflows, administrative duties, and herd diagnostics. This enables producers to optimize workflow and task clarity, execution efficiency, prioritization, and simplification of compliance assessments. PigFlow empowers managers with the ability to analyze and refine their processes and make adjustments to enhance overall value. If you're interested in learning how producers are maximizing their resources, enhancing efficiencies, and improving employee engagement and pig care with PigFlow, visit swinetechnologies.com.
So when you are entertaining the idea of working with a company that says, we can do this with AI, how do you know that that can be trusted when I can go build something with AI and it can be terrible? It's almost is I can do this with AI, the modern or the historic. You can do this with technology. Well, okay, cool, but like there's such a range between good, bad, ugly.
Yeah. So I'll tell a brief story from someone in my personal life that I think is relevant here. They came to me and they said, hey, I am having the time of my life. I'm working with Claude. I have built an app. It does all these things that I've always wanted to do. I am so excited. And the next question I asked is, well, how do you know it works? And they said, well, it says it ran 68 tests. And I said, well, what do those tests do? I don't know. Which is fine, but then I was like, okay, well, there's this thing in software engineering called test-driven development. This is how you might use that to help verify. And then there's integrated testing and there's unit testing. And this is how to have a conversation with AI about those to start putting them into your product, because like that's important. And then I started asking some questions about like, well, how do you know it's secure? Like, is it just sending stuff over plain text, like your password? Where's the data being stored? Who has access to it? Is it like, if you're ever going to sell this, is it secure enough that you're going to put your name on it and you might get a lawsuit? Like, how are you validating that?
Or is it putting your API keys out there?
Which a lot of people have posted about, and it happens. So to me, I feel like if I was looking for a company and they said, hey, I have all this AI stuff and it's cool, and at the same time, I'm like, hey, I could create it myself. One of the forcing factors that you really have to question is, am I going to cert it? Is it going to be SOC 2 compliant? Is it going to be ISO 27000 compliant? Is it going to be GDPR compliant? In the event of a legal action, have I done all the due diligence that needs to be done for this software so that things are safe and secure? And if for you, the answer is, you know what, I never want to have my data accessible via the internet, and I don't need all these things, then you're dealing with a different standard, right? Even myself in my personal life, yeah, I could write my own personal finance app. I don't. I am choosing to partner with a company that is SOC 2 certified because I'm not going to spend time with that. And I feel much better about it because guess what? They connect to my bank accounts.
There's some real misleading stories and messaging out there too, because the illusion, there's an illusion that I can go build a product just simply using this tool. And so many people get sold on what looks just so simple, but it's like an iceberg. You're seeing the nice little part at the top where we can properly evaluate what's going on, but underneath the water, you might have nothing, or you have one hell of a mess.
I mean, going back to my friend's story, the app they had built is 120,000 lines of code. They're not a developer by nature, so they don't know how to maintain it. They don't know what the code does. Honestly, that's a really cool story by itself, that AI is enabling that. But it also shines a light on a challenge of, hey, when you have built something and you are going to use it and you want to use it for something bigger, how do you get to that next level of security, compliance, safety, all that is important. And it's hard to do when you're tacking it on at the end instead of building with intent.
But that's a scary part, is it used to be that you at least had to know how to engineer. to write 120,000 lines of code. Now, you can have terrible engineers write 120,000 lines of code, and you can have great engineers do it. But this might be the first time where you can create an image, an experience, an illusion that really shitty 120,000 lines of code is amazing code. Like the front end component of things can be so misleading as to what's the quality of what's driving the whole system. Right?
I mean, I think it gets back down to like one of the jobs of engineers is to ask probing questions. And you have seen this happen between us for requirement after requirement on like, well, what do you actually want it to do?
Yeah.
And how does it supposed to work when things don't work? One of the things that engineers spend a lot of time doing is building out, in the event of a failure or something going wrong, this is what should happen. But typically when you're working with AI, you really only build the sunny day path, unless you're very explicit about, in the event of, I want you to build with these things in mind. In the event that there's no internet connection, this is the kind of functionality that should occur. And again, if you're not architecting for the rainy day paths, they won't exist. And then you're tacking them on at the end. And again, it harms the overall maintainability of the code.
And there's a lot of companies right now in deep lawsuits and issues because they made tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on the premise of something doing something that was written with AI, and it's not there.
Yeah. I mean, fraud is fraud.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't mean to do it. If AI is being fraudulent on the back end and you're not wise enough to be able to know that, you're
honestly,
still liable for fraud.
That's a really good point, because I feel like a lot of people conflate the idea that, similar to if I found it on Google, if I read it from my ChatGPT instance or I read it from Claude and then I say it, it's not my words. It's the AI bot's words.
Yeah.
But depending on how you're using it, how you're presenting it, whether or not you took ownership, like, you're liable for what comes of that. And a lot of people sort of be like, well, that's just, I followed that and that's correct.
Yeah, it's AI is what's liable. They're liable.
And that goes back to like when you are, as a company, getting into the world of AI and introducing it to your team, setting expectations. Like, hey, I don't care if you used Claude to write the email. I might want to know if you did. And owning the communication about, hey, I used Claude for this. I read it over. It makes sense. Here it is. Is a very different than, here's an email and it's pristine and it looks and smells right. But I didn't read it. I just asked Claude to generate it, and here's 400 words.
People shouldn't try to hide. Well, you should try to smooth it out and make it human as best as possible, but you shouldn't be like saying you didn't use AI when you did.
Yeah,
it's okay to say you
should
used
own
AI.
it. And honestly, that helps with accountability.
Yeah.
Like, did you read what came out? Do you agree with what came out?
Yeah, because a lot of people might just plug in, copy, paste, done.
Critical thinking.
Yeah,
it's imperative.
Now, I think what you've been describing is really from the engineer, the developer point of view, especially in terms of actually doing it, but from a decision maker point of view, or from the high altitude level of looking at it. I just recently did the Google certification for AI generalist leaders or something like that. In terms of implementing AI, and I'm no expert on it, but from a user point of view, I think it's very valuable too. What I learned was, in fact, the keywords are called governance and ethics, in terms of whether you should use AI, where you use AI, how you use AI, and how you report it, or how you control it, I guess I should say. But the thing is that one of the things with AI is what you were saying is it accurate? Number one. And you're talking about how it can be a big mess. But there's two basic different ways of using or implementing AI. Talking about implementation. One is just the low-hanging fruit, take drudgery work and just automate that. You can do it with a program. You can do it with AI. but that'll be like the engineer's point of view, where you double check it, whatever. But in terms of if you decide to adopt it in a corporation, you can't just do it. Well, we'll do AI here, and we'll do it here, and we'll do it here, and that might get you some things, but some advantages in terms of productivity. But in terms of when it all fits together, are you getting accurate information? And if you just have it scattered all around, how do you check? How do you check on it? So using it from a strategic point of view, where you say, all right, let's not just plug it in here and here and here. Let's look at
what's our AI plan.
Our whole plan. Yes, it's very important.
Would you recommend that class to other people after going through that?
It's a high altitude class. Yes, absolutely. It's Google. They know what they're doing, and they emphasize that quite a bit. And you learn about local models, and you learn about RAGs and how that can be useful too.
How long was the course?
Oh, I think it was designed to be like 14 hours or two.
Nice.
A week or two. So it's not that long.
So very digestible and manageable.
I did it in one day, and I probably shouldn't have, but but I already have some experience with it. But it's from Google's point of view, so you learn some things about. Actually, to be honest, their training, their lessons don't really prepare you for the test.
Oh, yeah.
The test is heavy on how Google does things. But since I kind of knew how Google does things, it was okay for me. But the training was very valuable. It's just it may not get you certification unless you actually take the time to read all the background information on it, which I already had, so it wasn't too big of a deal for me. But there's a lot more to it.
It's very exciting that people can just access that type of thing, right? And just learn. I think we've talked about security, some of the risks, how to mitigate some of those. I am curious, what is the one thing that excites you guys about AI the most here in the evolution that we're seeing nowadays?
One thing that really excited me when I took the first, it's a different thing, not the certification, but it was a boot camp. Which I'm still in. It actually lasts for a whole year, but it was a 2 weeks intensive and then 1 day a week for the rest of the year. Was agentic AI, where you can create agents. And one of the things that I was kind of thinking of when, Adam, you were talking about how to make sure that, like the 68 tests, what they were, is when you're creating an agent, you set it up with a role and a context. And one of the things I found to be very valuable in that boot camp was they would actually create a role for an agent to create the prompt to give to the agent that actually does the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very cool.
And also I was talking to somebody else yesterday, and they said they were using, was it you? Might have been you. I'm not sure. Codex versus Claude. And you would get, all right, have Claude write this code and have Codex check it, or the other way around, and both actually.
Yep.
I'll have GPT do stuff and then review it by Claude,
Yes.
and then I'll have my third tool.
Yes.
And AI follows AI better than
So you might actually have Codex and say, yeah, but what were those tests?
So when you think about AI as a skill, what does that mean to you? How should individuals be thinking about AI as a skill?
Number one, critical thinking. You have to be able to do critical thinking. And you have to understand the context.
And I guess maybe stack onto that, what does it mean to be good at AI?
Great questions. I guess from my perspective, having AI skill means that you're able to effectively use information. And I think it's really no different than, let's say, the Supreme Court, where each justice has experts for programming. They have experts for this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, it is not the expert in computer science who is making the decision about how that applies to law. It is the Supreme Court justice. If you can take that same sort of mindset into, hey, I'm working with AI, but I need to be responsible for what comes out. And if I don't understand it, I need to upskill myself to understand it. That is my mantra, my personal mantra for using AI. the thing that is so joyful, you asked about what's exciting about AI, is opening new horizons. Being able to do things you don't have professional talent in. The double-edged sword there is, how do you know it's right? How do you do that critical thinking step? How do you be that Supreme Court justice? And my advice at that point is build out the context to allow yourself to understand it. Whether that means, going to get a certification and learning more about it. I mean, you're doing it because you're passionate about it. Pour a little more energy into it and use that to ensure that you're building something that you can actually own and be proud of. That to me is where I would say focus. You asked about being good at AI. I don't think that's going to be people. And I don't think it's necessarily people today, given where the technology at. It's a context. It's all context. Context is king. So
people can't be good with AI?
People can be better than others at using it, sure. Okay. But like the real margin is all going to be driven on context. What is the context that your agent is using? What memory file is it using? How has it been informed to act? And how were those prompts written?
Yes.
And what information it's driving from and how you chose to set that up and run it, that's your margin. The rest of it is, if you know how to build that from scratch and you're going to do that every single time, sure. But that's going to be the primary differentiator.
Well, especially if you're discounting, putting in the reasoning to understand what it's saying. If it's not front loaded with all of that information, you're backloading the risk that you have to go in there and know your stuff.
Yeah.
If you're just out of the box throwing stuff into GPT, asking questions, and you are not, we'll call it a domain expert in the stuff it's kicking back, that's scary. But if you are a domain expert, you're making more efficient. Maybe you need a little less on the front end, but like that margin, it kind of plays based on, are you an expert or are you not? How much front loading and support do you need or do you not need? Is that fair?
And I mean something that developers talk a lot about specifically, since that's kind of who I am, is the concept of test-driven development and having that be a first step paradigm, first-class citizen, if you were, of your context for your AI agents. I want you to write the tests before you write the code. The tests will fail. I want you to write the code. The tests will pass. I don't want the tests to change. And then I want you to refactor such that the tests and the code are clean without changing function. That by itself dramatically changes how your AI writes code. And there's 100 little tidbits like that of how do you effectively use it.
So I have a question specifically for you as we're looking to wrap up here. SwineTech, we're getting involved with bringing artificial intelligence into PigFlow. We're releasing that at World Pork Expo.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what we're releasing at World Pork Expo, kind of what that's going to look like, and then what we hope to do maybe later in the year with some additional abilities?
Yeah. So with WPX, our target is that we're going to release a knowledge base bot, as it were. We're calling her Charlotte. And she will have the ability for you to upload documentation that is unique to your way of doing business, or add in additional superset information such as, hey, PIC, I want to know their genetic guidance for my herd, or I want to know DNA's genetic guidance for my herd. And I want that to be part of the context. The way we're building it is that every tenant on our platform has essentially a clean slate to an agentic infrastructure that we've built for you. So that when you do upload your custom information for your barn, it is for your barn specifically. No one else has access to that. And when somebody asks a question, it is already an informed pig LLM that knows about the swine industry, that knows about your PigFlow information, and can have access to this customized context that you're providing it to answer real-time questions. The beauty of it is that, again, you're in a situation where hopefully it's a company you trust and love, and we're in a position where we are pursuing that secure infrastructure. We are heading towards SOC 2 compliance. We're making sure that everything is built with security in mind, and we're thinking about those items at the beginning instead of at the end. You talked a little bit about what's coming next. I mentioned having access to your PigFlow data. We're building the second pillar after WPX is what we're calling conversational analytics, which will give you access to ask questions of your herd data. How many pigs were weaned from this sow yesterday? Or I want to know what my flow looks like, or I want to understand what illnesses this animal has been flagged for in the last year. I want to understand how many treatments have been given to this animal.
I have a need for 10 coal sows, and I want you to give me the ones that have performed the worst in these particular metrics. Or what pre-wean mortality was this room over the past 5 turns?
Our
what
objective,
farrowing crates?
Yep, and our objective is to take the LLM, the modern LLM experience that you're used to having, pairing it with your PigFlow information to allow you to have a conversation about your data. And for many producers, I think that might be the first time that that's happening, because having conversational access to analytics is not something that's readily out there right now.
You have great solutions to view historical reporting, but you need to go find those reports, and that maybe is solving bigger problems. I might be next to a sow, and I might need information to solve it pen side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and empowering the end user to have immediacy to their data, immediate access, and allowing them to be able to get that information at the tap of a button.
It's exciting. So before we wrap up today, I guess you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, you were asking about what we find the most exciting, and that's exactly what I find the most exciting. During the boot camp, it was the conversational access to data. But to do that with your own data and be able to just ask a question of it. And it's not a pre-programmed form. You just want to know something. And it can find that information after we provide the proper agent and structure and all that sort of stuff to accomplish that. But this conversational access to your own data, which is protected, so you don't have to worry about the data getting out. That's amazing. That's really, really cool.
So I got
multilingual.
Yeah, multilingual. So I got a rapid fire question for each of you. If you could go back in time and have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be? And I'll start with Abe.
Oh man, I don't know. This is a hard one for me because I have so many interests and this. Here, I'll just give you guys the short answer. One of the most impressive characters, I would say, or people from the past, in my opinion, is Tesla, Nikola Tesla. I think just his critical thinking, since we were talking about that, just the way he saw things, all the inventions that he was able to do, I think for me, just understanding how that worked and the process he took to get to where he achieved would be a very interesting story to hear.
About you, John?
I'd like to pick 2, but number 1, Steve Wozniak.
Yeah.
Because you probably knew I was going to say that.
Yeah, you should share.
Because he could easily navigate between software and hardware, and it didn't really matter. I'd really would love to have a conversation with him about AI to see what he has delved into and how he understands it and what he looks to see the future of that.
And for people listening, because there are many people listening that are not in the tech world, Steve Wozniak is a co-founder of Apple.
Right.
But he's not Steve Jobs, right?
He was the techie guy.
The techie guy.
And the other, if I could do a second one from history, probably kind of like Tesla, was Leonardo da Vinci, because he broke the mold in so many things. He invented and devised so many things.
All right, so real quick, if you could spend time with Nikola Tesla today, would you bring him forward, or would you go back in time and meet him in his era?
Man, he might just pass out.
I think
I
he'd
can't
die.
get that conversation. I would rather go back personally.
What about you, John, for both of yours? I guess Wozniak's still around.
Yeah. So Leonardo, I would bring him forward with Tesla. If I were bring him forward, because
You can't steal his guy.
somebody. Right, no. I'm talking about Leonardo. I think he was such an outside the box thinker that he would be able to come up to speed.
Yeah. Very cool. Adam, what about you?
I feel like every time I get this question, I have to reconsider it, and I choose a new person. Today, it happens to be Van Gogh. I think he had a very unique perspective on life, struggling with depression, but then also having the connection to paint Starry Night and think about a different way. And I would love to just have a deep conversation with him about, hey, how do you see life, and why is it that way?
Very cool. So while we're going through the next question, Logan, could you pull up a question that says, what will AI be able to do in 2036 on Google?
10 years.
I'm curious what Google is going to tell you it's going to be able to do in 10 years, just what it'll randomly tell us.
gonna be a
But next
sci-fi
question
book.
is, what's your favorite cut of pork? It's a pig podcast.
I have an answer. Pork loin, marinated lemon garlic.
There you go, pork board. You've been trying to sell more pork loin. Talk to Adam.
Ribs, any method. I just love
Any
pork
method?
ribs.
What's your best one?
I like them all. I mean, whether
All the equal.
Yep. Well, the only one when I think about barbecued pork, it's like the Texas, Kansas City, Midwestern.
But you like the sauce? You like it sauced or dry rub?
I prefer sauced of some type, but not. Sorry, North Carolinians.
Oh, you're not a vinegar base.
Not vinegar.
I love the vinegar base. Especially with the pulled pork. I was rushed. Pulled pork vinegar based, if you do it right, that has a very narrow window of success because it can go off the rails really fast. But when you hit it, I don't think anything comes close.
Now, when I go south and they put the coleslaw in with the pulled pork, I love that too.
Yeah. Where's the coleslaw? My mom had that. She's down south and they were making sandwiches, and there was when my parents lived down south, and they were making pulled pork sandwiches, and they did put the coleslaw on it. So where's the coleslaw? They're mad. What about you, Abe?
For me, it would have to be the pork chop. Can be the well-cooked pork chop.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Smoked, grilled, baked.
I would anyway. If
Really?
you cook it right, the flavor is going to be there, and it's going to be great.
It's awesome.
All right. I just want to point out you have not answered the historical figure question, nor have you given us a cut of pork.
I guess pulled pork vinegar base. I'll go with that because that was top of mind, and it's pretty freaking good. Logan, what'd you find?
I'll point out that it gave me 5 bullet points outlining key capabilities and integrations. First, and overall, it said it would transition from a collection of experimental tools to a foundational layer of global infrastructure, much like electricity or the internet, which, of course, references AGI, what you had talked about. It pointed out that there would likely be a silicon workforce, AI agents able to handle 80% of routine work. They identified advanced robotics merging with physical forms. They identified personalized digital twins. AI may be capable of modeling a digital version of an individual based on their physical self, a digital duality it references. It acknowledged climate and urban optimization as well, managing urban traffic and energy grids, reduce water usage, a hot topic of discussion right now. And then, of course, healthcare breakthroughs. It identified drug discovery speeds increasing by 10 times and early cancer detection improved by 6 to 18 months.
Wow.
Interesting.
Man, that'd be a whole new way of doing a double date. A digital twin of yourself.
I'm going to send my AI assistant.
That's future dating. That's future dating. You're not quite sure.
Filtering.
You're not quite sure who you're interested in, so I'm going to have my digital twin go out with that person.
And they gave me the TLDR, and you didn't make it.
Or go out with their digital twin.
Oh, yeah. Jeez.
I mean, those things are already kind of happening.
know.
People are having those
I know.
interactions already,
Yeah.
That's,
That's pretty scary.
Also happening algorithmically.
All right, so to wrap things up, what is a golden nugget, a bit of wisdom from your career, your life, something that maybe you live by, your mantra that you want to share with listeners?
So I guess for me, there are so many ways that that people can just be successful implement new things, AI, for example. But I think that something that has been always a constant on everything we do and everything I do is just adapt. Roll with the punches, adapt. And as you mentioned, there's always going to be something new to learn. You need to learn to essentially execute on that something new that you want to use and commit. Take the right path. And that is going to take adaptation from yourself first. And then you have to translate that to your team. So I think to me, that would be the one.
Adam?
Man, I think my golden nugget as of this moment and everything that's going on is hold on to critical thinking. It feels like there's been a slow decline of that in society, and the more you hold on to that, I think the better off you're going to be. And stick to critical thinking. Always question. Always learn.
John?
Well, I'm not much of a sports person, but I would like to take a couple of famous sports quotes. The first one, some basketball player said, "You miss all the shots you don't take."
No. That you're great by leading in with that you weren't a sports person. That was Wayne Gretzky hockey. But,
okay. Yeah. It was. Oh, very good. Now, along the same lines, and I know this is baseball. Okay. Even the best baseball player fails at more than half. I mean, if you got a 500,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's impossible.
Even the best baseball player strikes out more than half of the time.
Exactly. So that's the concept that I like. But the last thing you said was not just critical thinking, but always question. Always question authority. They're just up there. They're no better than you or me. Always question.
Yeah, it was like a remain curious, and then what's it called? A mantra, a phrase we have in the office and in our company culture is strong opinions loosely held. And I love that because I think that's life. Be confident about something, passionately pursue more information on it, be curious. But when you're wrong, pivot, learn, move on. Don't let your ego prevent you from growing yourself and others around you.
Personally, I've always said I want to be right, but I love to be proven wrong because that means I learned something and I can be more right next time.
Is there ever a greater growth moment than when you are doubling down on something and you learn you're wrong? Because, like, man, those are some checkpoints where you're like, oh,
you're not going to forget that.
You don't forget those.
Memorable.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Popular Pig. We aspire to learn and grow together through the experience and wisdom shared by our esteemed guests. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues within the swine industry. For more information, please go to popularpig.com to receive updates when new episodes are available. Popular Pig is brought to you by SwineTech, the award-winning creators of SmartGuard and PigFlow. To learn how PigFlow can help you streamline your workforce and reduce piglet and sow deaths, visit swinetechnologies.com.